In today's video, we are going to create an amazing poster design in Photoshop. Grab your mouse as we dive in. First things first, we are going to create a new document. Choose a solid color. With a solid color in place, we are going to create a new layer. Grab a soften brush. Foreground is set to the hex code we've copied. Opacity is set to 100. Then we click once. Set blend mode to hard light. Create a new layer. With a soften brush, foreground is set to white. And you click once. We are going to set the blend mode to soft light. Now we are going to create a curves adjustment layer. Reduce the opacity. Let's grab our asset for this tutorial. We are going to copy this texture first. Ctrl C to copy. Ctrl V to paste. Ctrl T, and we are going to transform this. We are going to set the blend mode to overlay and reduce the opacity. Holding down the shift key, we are just going to copy all these layers together. Ctrl C to copy, Ctrl V to paste. We are just going to position this right about here. We take this layer up all the way to the top. Ctrl A, and we are going to center this vertically. We are just going to position this right about here and take the layer all the way to the top. Selecting all these layers minus the text, we are just going to use the arrow key to adjust it. Create a curves adjustment layer. Reduce the opacity. With this layer selected, we are going to reduce the opacity. We zoom in with this layer selected. We are just going to use the arrow key and adjust that a bit. With the layer in place, we are going to create a mask. With the mask selected, we are going to grab the brush tool, set hardness to 100, opacity set to 100. Foreground is set to black, and we are just going to mask out that portion. With this layer selected, we are going to create an exposure adjustment layer. So basically, we are going to be painting some shadows. With the layer selected, we are creating an exposure adjustment layer already clipped onto the layer. With the mask selected, Ctrl I to invert. With a soften brush, we are going to reduce the opacity, right click and set hardness to 0. set foreground to white, and we are going to be painting some shadows. Reduce the opacity for the curves. We are going to create another exposure adjustment layer already clipped onto the layer. With the mask selected, we are going to press Ctrl I to invert the mask. With a soft hand brush, we are going to increase opacity and we are going to paint some highlights. With this layer selected, we are going to paint some shadows. So we are going to create an exposure adjustment layer clipped onto the layer. With the mask selected, Ctrl I to invert. With a soft hand brush, hardness is set to 0. We reduce the opacity, set foreground to white, and we are going to be painting some shadows. We are going to create another exposure adjustment layer clipped onto the layer. With the mask selected, Ctrl I to invert. Foreground is set to white and we are going to paint some shadows. So it's basically the same thing. You are going to create an exposure adjustment layer. Invert the mask by pressing Ctrl I. With a soft hand brush, you paint shadows or highlights. So with this layer selected, we are going to create an exposure adjustment layer. Invert the mask by pressing Ctrl I. Increase the opacity, foreground is set to white, and we are going to paint some shadows. With this layer selected, we are going to create a solid color. Copy this hash code. Once that is in place, we are going to reduce the opacity. With the mask selected, we are going to grab the gradient tool. Foreground is set to black. Then we are just going to drag this way to erase. With the mask still selected, we grab a soft hand brush. Right click and change roundness. Reduce the opacity, foreground is set to black. Then you are just going to make a few clicks to erase that portion. We are going to create an exposure adjustment layer. With the mask selected, Ctrl I to invert. With a soften brush, reduce opacity, foreground is set to white. Then we are just going to paint some back. Create a curves adjustment layer. Reduce the opacity. Now we just need to finalize everything with some contact shadow. So we grab a soften brush with a new layer. We are just going to grab a soften brush, change roundness, and we are going to paint some contact shadows. Once we have everything in place, then we are just going to merge all layers by pressing Ctrl Alt Shift E. We right click and convert that layer into a smart object. Then we'll go for camera raw. So filter, camera raw, filter. All you are going to do is you are going to play with the settings until you like the outcome. Once that is looking good, then we hit OK. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I do hope to see you in the next one. Till next time, stay creative.